Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Daily Bible Wrap Up. Happy that you're joining me on this journey today. A little bit late this morning. It is about 25 minutes late here on the square in beautiful downtown Franklin in Studio 1A. Glad to have you along. Start out today's reading. We are still in Psalm 78, verses 17 through 31 is the reading. I'm going to read verse 18 because it had special meaning for me today. Excuse me, they stubbornly tested God in their hearts, demanding the foods they craved. And so this is referring to the time of the Exodus and the Hebrews and their mumbling in the desert. They're like, oh, we wish that we had like some real food to eat and all that. And then God provided them with manna. We know that story. We've seen that story. That's a little bit of a parallel in my life. I've come to realize that in for me, I've got something called pre-atrial contractions or premature atrial contractions. It's a little arrhythmia issue, not really a big deal. It's just they're not dangerous. They're kind of a little uncomfortable at times. That's all. Um, it's I've come to realize that alcohol is a major contributor of that sometimes. Now, in themselves, they're not dangerous, but like I said, they can be uncomfortable because the next beat is like really boom. You can really feel it because it's like a beat, quick beat, reset, beat. Well, the long story short, I think that God has been using PACs to sort of like wake me up a little bit more. I can do better as far as, so I like to say, walk by the Spirit. Um, Actually, this gets back to when I first started to talk a couple weeks ago about walking by the Spirit and how that day home I was in Indiana. I'd had a talk with God on the banks of the Ohio River, and ever since that day, with the exception of one moment that was sort of a wake up call, ever since that day, my PACs have disappeared because I had that conversation with God. I stopped grumbling about I want to enjoy a cold beer when I need to decompress. And God has been constantly telling me, it's like, no, I want you to turn to me when you want to decompress. That's what I'm here for. Lesson learned for me is that God's not supposed to be like, we're not supposed to be obeying part of the time. We're supposed to be obeying all the time. And that leads to a fuller life, the life that he wants us to live. So this passage, particularly that line, really spoke to me about the grumbling because I was grumbling because I wanted this, I wanted that. God's like, so he's provided me ample feedback because I opened my heart to listen, and now I need to obey. And like I said, as for the PACs, they've been pretty much gone now. So at least for now, message received. We'll see. So pray for me, please. I appreciate if you would, that I continue to make good decisions with regards to that. In the New Testament, we're in Acts 17, verse 22 is where we start out today. Paul addresses the men of Athens, explaining that he explains God by noting that the Athenians already worshipped God as an, quote, unknown God. Paul's doing a pretty good job. He's speaking with people, to people, but he understands the people. He's talking in their lingo, their culture, their language, their in that sense, in my field of information security, I often say that if you're going to, as a security officer, you can't talk to the board of directors in your language, meaning you can't talk about number of viruses you stopped or this or that. The board doesn't care about that. They care about what does it mean for them from a business standpoint. Okay, well, what does that mean if we stop the viruses? How much money did we save, and how was the business protected? Same thing here. Paul's like not speaking initially what he believes. He's starting out by trying to explain I'm going to tell you the what, but here's the so what first. This is why that this is going to be important for you to listen. Now, he emphasizes that God now commands everyone everywhere to repent of their sins and to turn to him. And of course, repent means turning away. Now, some laughed at the concept of the resurrection because Paul eventually got into more of the details about the faith, but some became believers. And then we continue in Acts 18. Paul leaves Athens for Corinth, excuse me. And each Sabbath, Paul was teaching at the synagogue, trying to convince Jews and Greeks alike. And Silas and Timothy eventually joined him from Macedonia. When the Jews rejected his teachings, he just focused on the Greeks. He's like, I will preach, I will teach to whomever will listen. And I always say that that's a beginning point. It's like if the person doesn't have the heart to want to listen, then you cannot chisel through that. You can be there for them for when they open their heart, but you can't open it for them. It's my opinion. Many heard, many became believers and were baptized. Old Testament, we pick up the story in 1 Kings 18, verse 16. Now, Obadiah was convinced of Elijah's word and took him to Ahab. Remember, Obadiah at first is just like, I'm not going to take you because it's like you're going to just disappear like you always do, and he's going to have me killed. But Elijah gave his word, Obadiah accepted it, and Elijah goes to Ahab, who calls him a troublemaker. And Elijah says, I'm not a troublemaker. You're just doing this. All this has happened because you've turned away from God and are worshiping Baal. I'll prove it to you. Let's set up a test. You and your Baal worshippers, your Baal prophets, you and I were going to meet on a hill. We're going to set up a couple of altars. Let you go first with your 450. You have a couple of bulls. I'll have a bull. You'll have a bull. It's nice and equal. 450 against one. And of course, Baal against the God is what Elijah is saying. We'll let you go first. So the people are like, oh, yeah, we're going to call on Baal. They're going to, the whole thing was that you set up the bull on the altar, but you don't light the fire. It's like the real God will light the fire. So the Baalites, I don't know if that's what you want to call them, the prophets of Baal or Baal. Again, I don't know exactly the right pronunciation, but I'll go with Baal. They call on their God, they pray, they chant, they shout, they get more intense with it. And time goes on, it's like nothing's happening. Elijah mocks them. You can imagine it's like almost like a sporting event with trash talking going on. So that causes them to try harder. Nothing happens. No issue at all. Then at the time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah prepared his altar, called upon the Lord, and immediately, quote, the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned up the young bull. Boom. All he had to do was prepare and ask, and it was right there. Now, this demonstration convinced the people that were observing. It's kind of interesting, though. It's a little side note that we're called to believe on faith alone. They talk about how we don't have prophets anymore and all of that. So maybe in the beginning, to light the fire, no pun intended, of the faith, you needed to have more of these demonstrations. But now we're called to. We're not going to be able to replicate and have the fire of God come down to convince the heathens that they need to follow God. We are called to do this on faith alone now. We're called to repent now as well. Now, Elijah, after this, killed the prophets of Baal, and I'm thinking that this is probably to prevent further spread of their worship. And I guess that they didn't convert. If they had converted, I don't think Elijah would have killed them. It would have made sense. Now, Elijah then brought rain to the area, so now it was time. Well, as we learn in 1 Kings 19, Ahab told his wife Jezebel, who ordered Elijah killed. She didn't seem like that she's too pleased about all this, and I'm kind of wondering why. But I'm thinking that she's obviously was a strong Baal supporter. Now, maybe it was because she really believed in Baal, or maybe it was she gained some sort of material benefit from the 450 now dead Baal prophets. kickbacks of sorts. I don't know. Humans are humans. They'll find a way to make money or gain favor any way, shape, or form. They'll use people whenever they can. That's what being human, unfortunately, sometimes means. So Elijah fled, and then he prayed for death. It sounds to me that at this point in time, he's a broken man. Just think about what he did. It's like, oh, come on. I have called on the power of the Most High. I have been the most faithful, and 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 now I'm still being persecuted. An angel of the Lord appeared that night and told him to get up and eat baked bread that appeared on hot stones near his head. And also there was a jug of water there. Apparently there was enough bread there, assuming water too, to sustain him for a journey for 40 days and 40 nights, because he traveled to Mount Sinai. And here the Lord questioned Elijah why he was there. And twice Elijah said that he has zealously served the Lord, but the people of Israel have broken your covenant. So think about where he's at. He's at Sinai, which is where the people received the covenant. Now, the Lord tells Elijah, I still got plans for you. Don't know if you're happy about that or not, but still got plans for you. You got to go to Damascus, and you're going to anoint Hazael to be king of Aram, Jehu to be king of Israel, and Elisha to be your replacement. And Elijah finds Elisha. It's the first thing he does on this route, and recruits him to be his replacement per obedience and exactly what the Lord has said. That's it for today. I hope you have a wonderful day. And as I've been signing off recently, I think I explained a little bit more why I believe that it's so important to walk by the Spirit. I'm going to add one word to that. Walk by the Spirit consistently today. Take care.